8:59 a.m. HR logged me as 1 minute late on my timesheet. 9:02. My legal system auto-fired 27 notices, $91 million in accelerated equity. They thought they'd break me with a time clock tick. I'd planted the mine 12 years ago buried in Clause 12F. When the 9:02 alarm rang out, the 34th floor boardroom in Austin went silent. The one with shaking hands wasn't me, it was the CFO. They played checkers. I played contracts and clocks. My name is Morgan Tate, and I've spent 18 years building systems that don't break. Until this morning, I thought that included my career at ArcLight Vector Systems. The porcelain mug hit the recycling bin with a crack that made 3 junior analysts flinch. World's okayest firefighter of incidents. A gift from my team after I'd saved the platform from meltdown 17 times in 1 quarter. Now it sat among yesterday's kombucha bottles and performance optimization memos. I watched from my corner office as Brielle Hart, our new head of people, supervised the disposal. 32 years old, Stanford MBA, and a smile that could freeze helium. She'd arrived 6 weeks ago with promises of cultural refresh and human capital optimization. The plants died first, then the good coffee machine. Now she was coming for those of us who remembered when code quality mattered more than KPIs. Morning, Morgan. Brielle's heels clicked across the polished concrete like a metronome counting down to execution. I noticed you scheduled the executive sync for 7:30 tomorrow. I've moved it to accommodate our PM team's work-life balance initiative. Translation: the 26-year-old product manager she'd hired last week would now run meetings I'd designed to keep our infrastructure from imploding. The 7:30 slot works because our Singapore data center shift change happens at 8:15 their time, I said, keeping my voice steady as a load balancer. We need those 15 minutes of overlap to... I'm sure Tyler can handle the handoff documentation. She tilted her head, studying me like a compiler analyzing deprecated code. Speaking of documentation, I'll need your AWS route rotation procedures by end of day. For standardization. Standardization. In my world, that meant stripping away 18 years of battle-tested safeguards and replacing them with whatever Medium article was trending this week. I smiled. It was the same smile I wore during the 2019 ransomware attack, when I'd air-gapped our backups 30 seconds before the encryption hit. I'll have those procedures ready. She left trailing the scent of optimization and org chart disruption. I waited until her glass-walled office door closed before opening my personal cloud storage. Buried 3 folders deep past family photos and tax returns sat a directory labeled Umbrella. Inside contracts, addendums, and 18 years of meticulously logged decisions. But the crown jewel was a PDF from 2013, annotated in yellow highlighter. My original employment agreement negotiated when AVS was still 40 engineers in a converted warehouse. Back then, I'd insisted on one particular clause that our eager founders barely glanced at. Addendum C, Clause 12F. Any material reduction in compensation or unilateral docking of pay shall constitute good reason for termination, triggering immediate acceleration of all invested equity at current fair market value, superseding any subsequent equity plans or agreements. Below it, a note from my lawyer, Gideon Price. This language takes precedence under Delaware corporate law. Ironclad. I'd never needed it. Through 3 CEOs, 2 acquisitions attempts, and 1 hostile board takeover, I'd navigated by being indispensable. I was the one who knew which load balancer configs were held together by digital duct tape. The one who could sweet-talk our legacy payment processor when their API threw tantrums. The one who remembered why we never ever touched the cron job that ran at 3:17 a.m. every Tuesday. But Brielle Hart didn't care about institutional knowledge. She cared about age demographics on her diversity dashboards and salary bands that skewed too high for employees over 40. My phone buzzed. A Slack notification from Damon Ruiz, my former lead engineer who'd opted for new opportunities last month after 20 years with the company. Heard about the mug. You okay? I typed back, define okay. Still have that escape hatch we talked about. Gathering dust in the umbrella folder.
Might want to check the weather forecast.
I glanced out at the Austin skyline where storm clouds gathered despite the weather app showing clear skies. In the reflection of my monitor, I caught Brielle conducting a meeting with HR. She had a spreadsheet open. Even from here, I could see the column headers cost centers 40 plus, 10 plus years. The mug in the recycling bin hadn't been random. It was a declaration of war wrapped in corporate speak and work-life balance initiatives. I opened our time tracking system and reviewed my punch-in history. 6 years of 8 a.m. arrivals, plus or minus 3 minutes. Never late enough to matter, never early enough to seem desperate. The perfect corporate metronome. Tomorrow I decided I'd arrive at 8:59. They thought they were playing chess, moving pieces toward an inevitable checkmate. But they'd forgotten the first rule of systems architecture: always have a failover ready. My phone buzzed again. This time an email from HR. New timekeeping policy: zero tolerance for tardiness. Effective immediately. I smiled again, broader this time. Brielle Hart had just handed me the match. Time to light the fuse I'd buried in paragraph 12. The dismantling began with a process flow diagram. Secondary approval required for all infrastructure changes, Brielle announced at Monday's all-hands, her slide deck gleaming with consultant-approved graphics. HR will partner with technical teams to ensure knowledge transfer and succession planning. Translation: every deployment now needed a permission slip from people who thought Kubernetes was a Greek philosopher. I watched my team's faces slacken as she outlined the new world order. 15 senior engineers, average tenure 12 years, suddenly needing approval from Tyler the PM to push code they'd written before he'd learned to spell JavaScript. After the meeting, I found Kyle Martinez, our principal architect, staring at his revoked admin privileges. 20 years building this platform, he muttered. Now I need HR approval to check server logs. Document everything, I told him quietly. Email trails, ticket IDs, who signed what. All of it. He gave me a knowing look. You planning something? I'm planning for contingencies, like we always do. The cuts came swift and surgical. First, physical access. Our server room badges mysteriously stopped working, replaced with scheduled access windows that required 48-hour advance notice. Then the digital amputation root passwords rotated to a secure central system that nobody seemed to own. Finally, the psychological warfare performance improvement plans, backdated by 3 weeks, appearing in our HR profiles like retroactive prophecies of failure. I logged every move with the precision of a court reporter. Email from Brielle at 2:37 p.m. revoking database access. Ticket number HR 89234, stripping deployment rights. Slack message at 4:19 p.m. announcing streamlined approval chains that added 6 layers between problem and solution. Optimization doesn't fix kernel panics, Brielle, I said during our Tuesday one-on-one. It just repaints the dashboard while the engine burns. She smiled that liquid nitrogen smile. I appreciate your feedback, Morgan. Have you given thought to mentoring Tyler on infrastructure strategy for knowledge continuity? Knowledge continuity. As if 18 years of scar tissue from production outages could be transferred via PowerPoint. On my desk, weight balanced by a coffee mug that said, "There is no cloud, just other people's computers," sat my original employment contract. Yellow highlights blazed from Clause 12F like caution tape around a crime scene. Beside it, printouts of every email, every policy change, every minor adjustment to our working conditions. My lawyer Gideon Price had confirmed it over secure chat. Any reduction in pay, no matter how minor, triggers the clause. The acceleration is immediate and non-negotiable. You included a 0-minute cure period for intentional docking. Prescient. I was paranoid, I'd typed back. In tech, paranoia is just pattern recognition. Wednesday brought the final puzzle piece. An all-staff email at 4:48 p.m. subject line, exciting updates to timekeeping policy. 0 tolerance for lateness. 1 minute late equals 1 hour's pay docked. To ensure fairness and accountability across all levels. I read it 3 times, checking for loopholes. There were none. Brielle had crafted it with the same precision I used for firewall rules, except her target wasn't malicious packets. It was anyone with institutional memory and a salary that reflected their worth. That night I made my preparations. Not dramatic ones, I wasn't going to burn bridges or salt databases. I simply automated what needed automating. Trigger 9. I'd named it after the critical alert level that meant everything is on fire but we can still recover. A simple workflow system built on the same automation platform we used for infrastructure monitoring. It watched for specific conditions, material reduction in pay, as defined by Delaware labor law. When triggered, it would execute a preset sequence, generate, notice of good reason, create demand to cure, distribute to all required parties, start the clock on acceleration. I tested it against historical data. Response time 2 minutes 13 seconds from detection to full execution, well within the 0-minute cure window specified in 12F. Thursday morning I sat in the parking garage, engine off, watching the clock on my phone. 8:56, 8:57, 8:58. I thought about the mug in the recycling bin, about Kyle's revoked access, about the spreadsheet with our names and ages sorted by salary. 8:59. I walked through the lobby, badge scanning at 8:59 and 47 seconds. The security log would be precise, indisputable. Brielle stood by the elevator, bank tablet in hand, that nitrogen smile already formed. Cutting it close, aren't we, Morgan? 1 minute is still on time, I said pleasantly. Actually, our policy states arrival by 8:59. You scanned at 8:59:47. She turned her tablet toward me, showing the log. I'm afraid that's a violation. Behind her, 2 HR associates watched with the eager attention of interns at their first execution. So you'll be docking my pay? I asked, voice steady as a heartbeat monitor. Policy is policy. 1 hour's dock for 1 minute late. It's only fair. I smiled then. A real smile. The kind I'd worn the day we'd shipped our first million transaction day with 5 nines uptime. Of course, policy is policy. In my pocket, my phone buzzed once. Trigger 9 had detected the payroll adjustment. The fuse was lit. The beauty of automated systems is their complete lack of emotion. While Brielle savored her moment of bureaucratic triumph, Trigger 9 executed with machine precision. 8:59 and 47 seconds badge scan logged. 9:01 and 13 seconds payroll system updated with 1 hour dock. 9:01 and 58 seconds trigger 9 detected material reduction in pay. 9:02 and 13 seconds. 27 emails departed our exchange server like precisely guided missiles. I watched it happen on my phone while Brielle explained the importance of punctuality in leadership roles. Behind her, the HR associates typed furiously, probably documenting my lack of visible distress. I understand completely, I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket. Shall we head up? I believe we have the infrastructure review at 9:15. The elevator ride to 34 felt longer than usual. Brielle filled the silence with observations about culture fit and modeling behavior for junior staff. I nodded at appropriate intervals, mentally tracking Trigger 9's progress. By now, CEO Colin Dre would be staring at a PDF titled Notice of Good Reason Termination per Employment Agreement Section 12F. CFO Verity Locke would be parsing the acceleration calculations. General Counsel Elaine Brooke would be speed-reading Delaware precedents. We emerged into the executive floor's calculated serenity. Bamboo floors, glass walls, the kind of minimalism that cost maximum dollars. The conference room already held our usual suspects: Tyler, the Wonder PM, 2 junior HR staff, and notably no one from actual infrastructure. Where's Kyle? I asked, settling into my usual seat. Kyle's focusing on documentation today, Brielle said smoothly. Tyler will be leading our technical discussions going forward. I opened my laptop, pulled up the infrastructure dashboard. 3 amber alerts, 1 red. Normal for a Thursday morning, if you knew what normal looked like. Tyler, I noticed, had his screen on the company's social media metrics. Should we start with the payment gateway latency? I suggested. We're seeing 200 millisecond spikes every 37 minutes. Classic sign of... My phone buzzed. Then Brielle's. Then Tyler's. The synchronized chirping of corporate panic. Colin Dre burst through the glass door like a startup CEO discovering his burn rate. His face had the particular shade of pale reserved for executives reading legal documents they don't understand but know are expensive.
Morgan, my office, now.
Brielle started to rise. Colin's look could have frozen magma. Just Morgan. The walk to the corner office felt like a victory lap disguised as a funeral march. Through the glass walls, I could see the prairie of cubicles beginning to buzz. Slack channels lighting up. The first tremors of an organizational earthquake. Colin's office was a shrine to disruption rhetoric. Books about moving fast and breaking things. Framed IPO documents. A signed photo with some governor. He closed the door and spun his laptop toward me. $91 million. His voice cracked on the number. Current market value of my unvested equity, I confirmed, accelerated due to material pay reduction as per Clause 12F of my employment agreement. For being 1 minute late, for having my pay docked, the lateness was just the delivery mechanism. He rubbed his temples. Legal says your contract supersedes our current equity plan. Delaware law is quite clear on order of precedence. This will destroy the Northbridge acquisition. I said nothing. The Northbridge deal, $2.7 billion to buy an algorithmic trading platform, had been Brielle's crown jewel, the thing that would transform AVS from infrastructure company to fintech darling. It also came with MAC clauses so sensitive that a sneeze in the wrong direction could kill it. Colin's phone rang, the board chair from the ringtone. He declined it. What do you want, Morgan? I want my $91 million. The employment agreement specifies a 0-minute cure period for intentional pay docking. I pulled up the email Brielle had sent to payroll CCing half of HR. This was clearly intentional. We can reverse the dock, which would constitute retaliation under Texas labor law, since the dock has already been recorded and reported. I'd researched this thoroughly. Besides, Trigger 9 has already notified the NASDAQ compliance team. Any reversal now looks like covering up a material event. His phone rang again. This time he answered. I could hear Verity's voice high and sharp. The covenant calculations, debt ratios, MAC clause. While he talked, I opened Slack on my phone. The Hatch General Channel was a beautiful disaster. Anyone else locked out of prod? Payment Gateway is throwing 500s. Where's the runbook for certificate rotation? Does anyone know the vendor contact for BGP issues? I switched to my direct messages. Kyle. Load balancer certs expire in 90 minutes. No one else has the root CA password. Me check vault KMS folder ops last resort. Kyle, you beautiful paranoid bastard. Colin ended his call. His face had progressed from pale to ashen. The board wants an emergency meeting, 9:30. I'll be there, I said, standing. Morgan. He looked older than his 45 years. You've been here almost 2 decades. We've built something together. Doesn't that mean anything? I thought about my team's revoked access, about PIPs appearing like time-traveling accusations, about a spreadsheet that reduced 18 years to a cost center. It meant everything, I said, until you decided it meant nothing. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Colin. Your infrastructure is going to have some challenges today. Nothing malicious, I would never sabotage systems I built, but when you fire everyone who knows how they work and lock out everyone who can fix them... I shrugged. Well, policy is policy. The 9:30 board meeting was set in Conference Room A, the one with the dramatic city views, and the temperature kept at 68 degrees to ensure nobody got too comfortable. I arrived to find a war council already assembled. Colin Verity, Elaine Brooke, from Legal 2 board members participating via video, and notably absent Brielle Hart. $91 million. Verity Locke, our CFO, had the voice of someone watching their Excel models commit suicide. At current share price, due immediately per the acceleration clause. Board member Harrison Cho's face pixelated on the wall screen. Explain to me how a 1-hour pay doc triggers this catastrophe. Elaine cleared her throat, legal pad dense with notes. Ms. Tate's 2013 employment agreement contains an unusual clause. Any material reduction in compensation triggers good reason termination with immediate vesting acceleration. The cure period for intentional docking is 0 minutes. 0 minutes. Board member Sandra Way leaned forward on the other screen. Who agrees to that? We did, Colin admitted. Back when Morgan was employee number 12 and we needed her expertise to scale. Nobody imagined. That you'd dock my pay over 1 minute, I interjected calmly. Actually, I imagined exactly that, hence the clause. Verity's laptop chimed. She went paler. Northbridge's lawyers. They're invoking the MAC clause review. A $91 million unexpected payout qualifies as a material adverse change. The Northbridge acquisition was supposed to be Colin's legacy. $2.7 billion to transform AVS from infrastructure plumbing to fintech powerhouse. The deal had been structured with debt financing so precise that a $10 million variance could trigger covenant breaches. We'll contest the acceleration, Harrison declared. On what grounds? I asked. The employment agreement is unambiguous. Your own HR system shows the intentional dock. 27 parties have been notified per SEC requirements. Unless you're planning to argue that Delaware contract law doesn't apply in Texas. Elaine shook her head minutely at Colin. Translation, we have no case. What if we settle? Sandra's practical voice cut through. $12 million cash vested over 4 years, full NDA. No. $20 million. $91 million, today, as specified in the contract you signed. Colin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and winced. Infrastructure alert. Payment gateway is down. I kept my expression neutral. The load balancer certificates were expiring and I checked my watch. 22 minutes. Kyle had the passwords now, but he'd need to coordinate with 3 vendors who only knew my voice. The wiki with vendor contacts had been optimized last week into a new system that required HR approval to access. We need you to fix it, Colin said. I'm no longer an employee. My access was revoked at 9:01 this morning. We'll restore it. Which would be interesting to explain to the labor board, given that you've just terminated me for cause due to tardiness. I pulled up my phone, showed them the email trail. Besides, I'm sure Tyler can handle it. He's been leading technical discussions according to this morning's meeting. Verity's phone rang. She stepped out to answer, returned looking like she'd seen the company's future, and it was Chapter 11. Deutsche Bank. They're concerned about covenant ratios if we pay out $91 million. They want an emergency audit. The room fell silent except for the whisper of air conditioning and the distant ping of infrastructure alerts. There might be another way, Elaine said carefully. If Morgan were to voluntarily waive,
No. You haven't heard the offer.
Unless it starts with $91 million and ends with transferred today, I'm not interested. Harrison's face reddened on the screen. This is extortion. This is contract law. I stood gathering my things. You have my acceleration notice. Payment instructions are in Exhibit D. You'll want to initiate the wire before markets close, unless you prefer explaining a delayed material disclosure to the SEC. Morgan, wait. Colin's CEO voice cracked, revealing the engineer he'd been before slideware and stock options. The payment system is down. We process 8 million in transactions daily. If we can't fix this... I paused at the door. I know exactly what happens if you can't fix it. I built it, remember, before you decided building things was less important than optimizing the people who build them. Please. The word hung in the climate-controlled air. I thought about 18 years of 3 a.m. pages, of systems held together by expertise and duct tape, of teams who trusted me to keep the lights on while executives played reorg roulette. $250,000, I said. Consulting rate, 4-hour minimum. Clock starts when the wire for $91 million clears. That's robbery, Harrison sputtered. That's market rate for someone who can fix your certificate rotation, restore your payment gateway, and explain to your vendors why nobody knows their emergency contact protocol. I checked my phone. 19 minutes until the load balancer cert expires. 18 until your backup payment processor starts charging penalties. 17 until...
Fine, Colin snapped. Verity, initiate the wire.
Verity looked physically ill as she opened her laptop. I need board approval for this amount. Sandra and Harrison exchanged pixelated glances. Motion to approve emergency payout per employment agreement terms.
Seconded. All in favor.
A chorus of reluctant eyes. Motion carries. Sandra's voice could have frozen hell. And Colin, we'll be discussing your HR strategy at the next board meeting. I smiled pleasantly. Wonderful. I'll expect confirmation of the wire within the hour. In the meantime, you might want to check your Slack. The hacked incidents channel is quite colorful this morning. As I reached the door, Elaine called out, "We'll need you to sign a statement that this matter is resolved. No further claims." Of course. My lawyer will review any documents. His rate is $800 an hour, by the way. Very reasonable for employment law. I left them in their refrigerated panic walking past Brielle's empty office. Apparently she'd discovered urgent business elsewhere and took the stairs down to 27. My old floor. My team was huddled around Kyle's desk watching error logs cascade like a waterfall of failure.
Morgan. Someone spotted me.
Can you... Not until the wire clears, I said loudly enough for the security cameras. But Kyle, you might want to check that vault folder we discussed. Password's the same as the old disaster recovery protocol, the one we used during the 2019 ransomware incident. Understanding dawned on his face. The nobody writes this down because security password, that's the one. I headed for the exit phone buzzing with notifications. Damon, heard the payment system is down. Need help once you're free. Me start putting the band back together. Consulting rates only. Damon, the gang's going to love this. At 9:58, as I sat in my car in the parking garage, my phone chimed with a beautiful sound. Wire confirmation, $91 million transferred to my attorney's escrow account.
I called Gideon. It's done.
Clean. As clean as contract law gets. They even approved my consulting rate to fix what they broke. You beautiful paranoid bastard. I'll handle the tax structuring. Congratulations on your retirement. Retirement. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd been too focused on the principle you don't optimize away the people who built your kingdom and expect the walls to stand. Another notification. Colin via official AVS email. Wire confirmed. Please advise on infrastructure remediation. I smiled, started my car, and headed back inside. Time to send them my first invoice. The infrastructure fire spread with the predictable beauty of cascading failure. By 10:15, what started as expired certificates had evolved into a full system meltdown that would make compelling case studies for a decade. I stood in the war room, what we used to call the Network Operations Center, before Brielle renamed it the Innovation Hub, watching Tyler fumble with a keyboard like a pianist who'd only played Guitar Hero. Around him, the junior staff she'd hired buzzed with the frantic energy of people discovering that motivational quotes don't fix kernel panics. "The payment gateway is timing out," Tyler announced, as if we couldn't see the red alerts painting every monitor like digital blood splatter. "Because the load balancer certificate expired," I said, calmly sipping coffee from a paper cup. My world's okayest mug was still in the recycling bin. "Which broke SSL termination. Which cascaded to the API gateway. Which... Can you just fix it?" His voice cracked on the last word. I glanced at my phone. Wire cleared 17 minutes ago. My 4-hour minimum starts now. First thing who has the certificate authority root password. Blank stares all around. "It was in the wiki," someone ventured. "Which wiki?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "The one that got migrated to the knowledge base that requires HR approval to access, or the one that got deleted during the documentation refresh?" Tyler's face achieved a shade of pale that would make Brielle proud. I'll check with HR. "You do that. Meanwhile, your backup payment processor started charging penalties 9 minutes ago, 40,000 per hour if memory serves. The room erupted in what I call productive panic, the kind where everyone moves frantically but nothing improves. I let them marinate in it while I texted Kyle. Check the vault folder subsection when everything burns. Password is the concatenation of the 3 server names from the 2019 incident reverse alphabetical order. 3 minutes later, Kyle burst in holding a laptop like a holy relic. Got it. But Morgan, these vendor contacts, half these phone numbers are personal cells. How did you... 17 years of relationship building. I took the laptop, pulled up our vendor console. Watch and learn. And someone get me a speakerphone that actually works. The first call was to Jerome at CloudForge, who managed our certificate infrastructure. Jerome's personal cell saved from when we debugged a critical issue during his daughter's birthday party.
Morgan thought you were dead or promoted.
Terminated, actually. But they're paying me consultant rates to fix what they broke. Need an emergency cert rotation. For AVS, their payment gateway's been timing out for 30 minutes. My alerting system looks like a Christmas tree. That's why I'm calling. Can you push the emergency rotation protocol? The one we created after the 2018 incident, sure, but I need the security phrase. I smiled. Your daughter's middle name plus the restaurant where we had BBQ that night. Isabella Franklin's. Christ, you remember everything. Pushing certs now. ETA 12 minutes. One fire partially contained. I moved to the next, the payment processor. They required a voice authorization from an approved contact. Naturally, they only had my voice print on file. Tyler, I called out. What's my current employment status? He looked confused. You're consulting. Get me written confirmation. Email from Colin. If Global Pay asks, I need to be officially authorized to speak for AVS. I turned to Kyle. Pull up the vendor emergency contact spreadsheet. Which version, the one Brielle's team optimized, has 17 approval layers? The real one. Vault folder, actual important stuff. Password is my badge number plus the date of the first production outage I fixed. While Kyle retrieved humanity's last hope, I watched the metrics dashboard. Transaction failures climbing. Queue depth approaching critical. Error rates that would give our SRE team nightmares if we still had an SRE team instead of Tyler's Reliability Innovation Squad. My phone rang. Damon.
How bad is it? He asked without preamble.
Remember the 2016 cascading failure? The one that took 18 hours to fully resolve. That was with a full team who knew the systems. Current estimate 48 to 72 hours with this crew. Jesus, need backup. Not yet, but start making calls. I have a feeling AVS is about to discover the market rate for emergency infrastructure consulting. Colin's authorization email arrived. I forwarded it to legal, then dialed Global Pay. Navigated their phone tree with muscle memory. Reached Samantha in vendor relations who recognized my voice before I finished introducing myself. Morgan. We've been trying to reach AVS for an hour. Your transactions are failing at 87%. I know. We have a certificate mismatch causing SSL handshake failures. Can you temporarily whitelist our backup endpoints while we rotate? I'd need director-level approval for that. Check your email. CEO authorization just sent. Keyboard clicks. Confirmed. Whitelisting for 4 hours. Make it 8. We have some architectural debt to pay down. She laughed. When don't you all right backup endpoints are hot? You should see transaction flow resuming in now. The payment dashboard flickered from red to amber. Not perfect, but no longer hemorrhaging money at $40,000 an hour. Tyler, I called out. You're now running on backup processors. Latency will be higher, costs will increase by 15%, but at least you're processing payments. This buys you 8 hours to fix the primary gateway. He nodded frantically, typing what I assumed were update messages to executives who'd just learned that move fast and break things applied to revenue streams too. My phone buzzed. A Slack DM from someone I didn't recognize. I checked their profile, Angela Rodriguez, senior engineer, 5 years with the company. Are you the Morgan Tate? the one who wrote the original payment architecture. Guilty. Holy shit! We studied your design docs in my distributed systems class. That circuit breaker pattern saved us millions in 2020. Glad to hear someone still reads documentation. Where were you during this morning's meltdown? Home. My badge access was revoked yesterday. Reorganization for optimal team sizing. I looked around the war room at Tyler's collection of boot camp graduates and motivational speakers masquerading as engineers. Interested in some consulting work, I have a feeling AVS is about to need engineers who actually understand systems. Is this the rebellion I've been hearing about on Blind? This is contract negotiation with extreme prejudice. You in? Send me the details. I pocketed my phone and addressed the room. All right, children. Certificate rotation completes in 8 minutes. Backup payment processing is stable. Your primary gateway needs a full rebuild. Your vendor relationships need repair, and your documentation needs to exist. Questions? Tyler raised his hand like we were in school. Can you stay until everything's fixed? I checked my watch. My 4-hour minimum ends at 2:02. After that, it's $12,500 per hour. 12? That's insane. That's market rate for someone who knows which of your 300 microservices actually matter. Speaking of which, has anyone checked the batch processing scheduler? The one that handles overnight settlements. More blank stares. No interesting. That cron job runs at 3:17 a.m. If it fails, you'll discover why we never touched it. Something about 8 million in transactions getting very, very stuck. Tyler's typing intensified, probably adding more zeros to whatever emergency budget Colin was about to approve. I smiled, remembering Brielle's spreadsheet of cost optimizations. Turns out institutional knowledge had a price after all. It just wasn't the one they'd budgeted for. The boardroom at 2:30 looked like a Fortune 500 war crime. Colin sat at the head of the table, tie-loosened hair displaying the kind of disarray that only comes from running fingers through it while watching money evaporate. Verity clutched her laptop like a life preserver, occasionally glancing at numbers that refused to improve. Elaine Brooke had accumulated 3 legal pads worth of notes. Board members Harrison and Sandra attended via screens, their faces frozen in expressions of capitalist horror. The chair meant for Brielle remained conspicuously empty. $91 million. Colin's voice had the hollow quality of a man reading his own obituary. Paid at 10:02 this morning. Plus consulting fees. Verity added, her CFO precision intact, even in defeat. $50,000 for the 4-hour minimum. Ms. Tate has indicated her ongoing rate is $12,500 per hour. Harrison's face pixelated with rage. This is extortion, plain and simple. This is contract law. Elaine corrected, exhaustion creeping into her lawyer's precision. I've reviewed the employment agreement 12 times. It's ironclad. The acceleration clause is unambiguous. The 0-minute cure period for intentional docking is explicitly stated and Delaware precedent. I don't want precedent, Sandra interrupted. I want solutions. The Northbridge acquisition is dead. Verity closed her laptop with finality. They invoked the MAC clause at noon. The $91 million payout breached our debt covenants. Deutsche Bank is demanding immediate covenant renegotiation. Our credit rating is under review. And she paused, gathering strength for the killing blow. The infrastructure failures this morning resulted in approximately $3.7 million in direct losses, plus penalties, plus reputation damage that marketing estimates at another $10 to $15 million in lost customer lifetime value. The room fell silent except for the whisper of ventilation systems I'd personally optimized for sound dampening back in 2018.
Where's Brielle? Sandra asked.
Colin's jaw tightened, attending to a family emergency. Translation hiding until the blast radius became clear.
What are our options? Harrison demanded.
Legal action, clawback provisions. There must be something. Would you like me to list what doesn't exist? Elaine's professionalism cracked slightly. Clawback provisions in the original agreement, number arbitration clause, number non-compete that survives termination, number what does exist, is a contract drafted by someone who understood exactly how this company might try to dispose of them. A knock at the door. Tyler entered, laptop under one arm, defeat written across his face. The 3:17 a.m. batch processor. We found the documentation. And it's tied to a legacy system that requires manual intervention if it fails. The only documentation is a post-it note that says, "Ask Morgan." I chose that moment to enter, having been waiting outside for the dramatic timing. Actually, it says, "Ask Morgan or prepare 3 envelopes." Did no one understand the reference? 5 faces turned to me with varying degrees of desperation and hatred. The 317 cron job. I continued settling into the chair they hadn't offered, handles settlement reconciliation with our East Coast banking partners. It runs at that specific time because of a quirk in how Bank of America's systems process batch files. Miss that window, and 8 million in transactions go into manual review limbo. The fix requires knowing the personal cell of someone named Dmitri, who works nights in their settlement department and enjoys discussing Russian literature. "You're joking," Tyler said. "Call the number in the vault under Dmitri Dostoevsky Settlements and find out. Password is the first line of Crime and Punishment in transliterated Russian." Colin leaned forward. "What do you want, Morgan?" "I want what you already paid me. $91 million for 18 years of building systems you thought were replaceable." I pulled out my phone, showed them my consulting invoice. "I also want payment for the 4 hours I just spent stopping your company from bleeding out. And I want something else." "Name it," Sandra said quickly, too quickly. "Written confirmation that my termination was due to the pay doc, not performance. A neutral reference letter acknowledging my contributions. And," I smiled, "a freeze on all age optimization initiatives currently in progress." "We can't commit to," Colin started. "You can, and you will." I pulled up my phone, showed them an email. "This is from a former compliance analyst at AVS. They've prepared a whistleblower complaint about systematic age discrimination in your recent terminations. 47 employees over 40 terminated or pushed out in the last 6 months. Average tenure 15 years. Projected cost savings 32 million. Actual cost in lost institutional knowledge priceless." "That's confidential information," Harrison sputtered. "That's publicly available data cross-referenced with LinkedIn updates. Amazing what people post when they're angry about being optimized out of existence." Elaine scribbled furiously. "If we agree to a hiring freeze on the age-based initiatives," "Not a freeze, a reversal. Offer reinstatement to anyone terminated under Brielle's optimization program. Full benefits, restored seniority, no questions asked." "That would cost less than another morning like today." I stood. "You have 2 hours to decide. After that, I suspect the whistleblower might find the courage to file their complaint. Oh, and my friend at TechCrunch is very interested in the story of how AVS paid $91 million because they docked someone for being 1 minute late." Colin's face had progressed beyond pale to translucent. "You're destroying this company." "No, I'm charging you market rate for the institutional knowledge you tried to throw away." I headed for the door, paused. "By the way, that 3:17 a.m. cron job, it also triggers a cleanup process for your audit logs. Skip it 3 days in a row, and your compliance reporting breaks in ways that make SOC2 auditors weep." "Wait," Verity called out. "If we agree to everything, the reference, the reinstatements, all of it, will you help us transition, document the critical systems, train replacements who actually understand the architecture?" I turned back. 6 months of transition consulting. $500,000 per month plus reinstatement bonuses for every terminated engineer who returns. I'll document every system, train your teams, and ensure you never have to ask, "What does this do?" at 3 a.m. again. $3 million? Harrison's voice cracked. "Plus the $91 million you already paid. Plus the restoration costs for your reputation. Plus whatever it takes to keep the engineers who haven't left yet." I shrugged. "Or you can let Tyler figure out why the audit logs just stopped working." Sandra cleared her throat. "I moved to accept Ms. Tate's terms. All of them." "Seconded,"
Colin said, defeat weighing down each syllable. All in favor.
A chorus of broken eyes. Motion carries. Sandra's glare could have melted steel. And Colin? We'll be discussing your leadership at the emergency board meeting tomorrow. Brielle Hart's termination should be on the agenda. I smiled. Wonderful. I'll have my lawyer draft the agreement. In the meantime, you might want to check on that 317 process. You have about 13 hours to figure out Dimitri's password. As I left, I heard Tyler's panicked voice. What's the first line of Crime and Punishment in Russian? Colin's response was too quiet to hear, but I imagined it was a prayer. Or possibly a resignation letter. Either way, my work here was done. For the next 6 months anyway. The counteroffensive began at 4:45 with a text from Kyle Brielle's back. Emergency all hands at 5. Mandatory. I was sitting in my car reviewing the transition agreement my lawyer had drafted when the second wave hit. A forwarded email from someone inside, subject protecting AVS from predatory practices. Predatory. They were actually going to try it. I walked back into the building badge somehow still active, probably because no one knew how to revoke access without breaking 17 dependent systems. The all-hands space thrummed with the nervous energy of employees who'd watched their company nearly implode over a timesheet entry. Brielle stood at the podium, power suit, immaculate smile cranked to absolute zero. Behind her, a presentation titled, Securing Our Future, The Real Cost of Technical Debt. Team, she began. Voice calibrated for maximum resonance. Today we witnessed what happens when outdated practices meet modern challenges. Our infrastructure didn't fail because of missing documentation or expired certificates. It failed because it was built on 18 years of band-aids held together by tribal knowledge and personal relationships instead of scalable processes. I found a spot in the back next to Angela Rodriguez and 3 other engineers who'd been optimized, but returned when the systems caught fire. The payment to Ms. Tate, Brielle continued, represents not just a failure of contract management, but a hostage situation. For too long, AVS has been held captive by employees who built deliberately opaque systems to ensure their own job security.
Did she just call you a terrorist? Angela whispered.
Shh, she's about to propose something spectacular. And she did. Slide after slide of modernization initiatives, outsourcing critical infrastructure to offshore teams, replacing custom systems with off-the-shelf solutions, democratizing institutional knowledge by forbidding any system that required specialized understanding. By Q3, Brielle announced, we'll have eliminated every single point of failure that depends on individual knowledge. No more 3 a.m. phone calls to personal friends. No more Post-it notes with cryptic passwords. No more million-dollar ransoms for basic operational continuity. The crowd stirred uneasily. Some nodded the Tyler cohort, who thought infrastructure was just another word for technical debt. Others looked horrified, the survivors who understood what actually kept the lights on. Then she played her final card. Effective immediately, any employee found maintaining undocumented systems or personal vendor relationships will be subject to immediate termination for cause. This includes storing passwords outside approved management systems, maintaining personal contact lists for vendors, or creating any process that cannot be fully operated by a junior engineer within 1 week of training. Questions. I raised my hand. Every head turned. Brielle's smile flickered like a failing LED. Ms. Tate, I wasn't aware you were still consulting. 6-month transition agreement signed an hour ago. I stood, making sure my voice carried. Quick question about your modernization plan. Have you run it past the infrastructure team? What infrastructure team we're building? The one you just threatened to fire. The people who know why we use Bank of America's settlement window at 317. Who understand why the payment gateway has custom circuit breakers. Who remember why we never ever touched the Tuesday cron job. Tribal knowledge, she said dismissively. Exactly what we're eliminating. No, evolutionary adaptations. Every weird timestamp, every custom script, every personal relationship exists because something broke and someone fixed it. You're not eliminating technical debt, you're erasing institutional memory. Tyler stood up eager to score points. With proper documentation. Documentation captures what? It doesn't capture why. It doesn't tell you that Dimitri at Beaufait only answers his personal cell because his desk phone routes to a dead queue. It doesn't mention that our custom circuit breaker prevents a specific edge case that occurred once in 2017, but would cost $40 million if it happened again. It doesn't explain that the Tuesday cron job is actually working around a leap year bug in a vendor system that they've refused to patch for 8 years. The room had gone silent. Even Brielle's smile had flatlined. These aren't signs of dysfunction, I continued. They're scars. Proof that someone cared enough to fix problems instead of just documenting them. You want to modernize, great. But if you criminalize the people who know where the bodies are buried, you'll spend the next decade stepping on graves.
Are you finished? Brielle's voice could have frozen plasma.
Almost. I'd like to propose a counter-initiative. I pulled out my phone, projected a single slide onto the wall. The AVS Knowledge Preservation Project. 6 months to document not just what our systems do, but why they do it. Story time with the engineers who built them. Recorded sessions explaining every hack, every workaround, every personal relationship that keeps this company running. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The old guard perked up. Even some of Tyler's brigade looked interested. Furthermore, I continued, any engineer who contributes institutional knowledge gets a retention bonus. $10,000 for documenting a critical system. $25,000 for training a sustainable replacement. $50,000 for anyone who's prevented an outage using undocumented knowledge. You can't just, Brielle started. Actually, I can. Page 17 of my consulting agreement. Full authority over knowledge transfer processes and transition planning. I smiled. You should read contracts before your CEO signs them in a panic. Colin appeared at the side door looking like he'd aged 5 years since morning. He caught Brielle's eye, shook his head minutely. Whatever counterattack she'd planned, it had just been vetoed. The board has concerns, he said carefully approaching the podium, about our approach to institutional knowledge, about our recent optimization strategies, about the true cost of losing experienced engineers. Brielle's face cycled through emotions like a malfunctioning LED confusion, betrayal, rage, and finally cold calculation. I see. She gathered her materials with mechanical precision. Then I'll need to review my own optimization strategies. She left the stage with the dignity of a deposed dictator. The room exhaled collectively. Colin took the mic. The Knowledge Preservation Project starts Monday. Any employee terminated in the last 6 months will receive reinstatement offers by Friday. And, he paused, looking directly at me, we'll be reviewing all policies implemented without proper impact assessment. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Engineers clustered talking excitedly about systems they could finally document properly. The Tyler Brigade huddled, probably updating their resumes. Angela appeared at my elbow. That was beautiful, but Brielle's not going to take this quietly. No. I agreed, watching through the window as Brielle made a phone call in the parking lot. She's got one more play. Want to bet what it is? Wrongful termination suit, discrimination claim, shareholder derivative action. Nope, I smiled. She's calling recruiters. By Monday, she'll try to poach every engineer who knows a critical system, offer them double to leave without documenting anything. Angela's eyes widened. That's actually brilliant. Evil but brilliant. Which is why I already called them first. Damon's been organizing the old guard. Anyone who gets a poaching call has a better counteroffer, waiting consulting rates to document their systems, plus equity grants for staying through the transition. You turned her own playbook against her. No, I just remembered that institutional knowledge isn't just technical. I headed for the door. It's knowing which recruiters she uses, what tactics she deploys, how she thinks. She optimized for $32 million in savings. I optimized for the next war. As I left, I heard Colin announcing the emergency board meeting schedule. Brielle Hart's future at AVS would be decided within 48 hours. But her defeat had been locked in at 8:59 that morning. She just hadn't read the documentation. The whistleblower email arrived at 6:23 p.m. while I was documenting the payment gateway's circuit breaker logic for the transition team. The sender had used a Proton mail address, but the writing style was pure compliance analyst meticulous damning and backed by enough evidence to bury Brielle's optimization program under a mountain of EOC violations. To whom it may concern attached, please find documentation regarding systematic age discrimination at ArcLight Vector Systems, including but not limited to termination patterns correlating to age brackets, internal communications regarding cost optimization by demographic, and statistical analysis showing a 347% higher termination rate for employees over 40 in the past 6 months. My phone buzzed. Gideon Price, my lawyer. Morgan, I just got copied on something interesting. Seems someone at AVS has been keeping very detailed records. How detailed? Spreadsheets with birth dates and target savings. Emails discussing optimizing out the pension generation. Slack messages about making older employees uncomfortable enough to self-select out. It's a plaintiff lawyer's Christmas morning. I forwarded him the whistleblower email. Same source, I think. What's the exposure? For AVS, catastrophic. For Brielle, personally career-ending. For you. I could hear his smile. Potentially lucrative. Whistleblower awards for age discrimination can hit 30% of recovered damages. I didn't file the complaint. No, but you did surface the pattern. And if AVS settles with the affected employees to avoid a class action, I did the math. 47 employees, average salary of $200,000, typical settlement of 2 years' pay plus damages. That's roughly $30 million in settlements. Plus penalties, plus legal fees, plus the cost of a consent decree that would put their hiring practices under federal oversight for years. The war room door burst open. Collins stood there, face the color of expired milk. Morgan, we need to talk. I followed him to his office where Elaine Brooks sat with 3 laptops open and the expression of someone calculating billable hours in real time. On the center screen, the whistleblower email with attachments that would make a discrimination lawyer weep with joy. Did you do this? Collins' voice barely contained panic. I told you someone had prepared a complaint. I didn't file it. But you knew. I know lots of things, like how your head of HR kept a spreadsheet called Cost Targets 40 Plus Q3 Update, XLSX on the shared drive, or how she used Slack to coordinate termination timing to avoid triggering WARN Act notifications, or how she specifically instructed managers to create paper trails for older employees while fast-tracking younger replacements. Elaine's typing intensified. The whistleblower knows our internal systems. They pulled emails, Slack messages, even database queries showing compensation analysis by age bracket. Someone in compliance probably, I suggested. Someone with access to HR systems who got tired of watching their colleagues disappear. Someone who kept copies of everything before it got deleted in the latest cleanup. Collins slumped in his chair. What do they want? I opened the email's final page. Full reinstatement for affected employees. Back pay with interest. Elimination of all age-based optimization programs. And, oh, this is interesting, immediate termination of Brielle Hart with cause forfeiting all invested equity and bonuses. We can't just... You can, and you will. Elaine closed her laptop with finality. This evidence is damning. If it goes public, if the EEOC launches an investigation, if the affected employees organize a class action, Colin, this could destroy AVS. Brielle said she was optimizing for efficiency. Brielle optimized for a discrimination lawsuit with a bow on top. Elaine pulled up another document. I've been reviewing her communications. She literally wrote pension-aged in a termination recommendation. She used the phrase digital natives only in a hiring memo. She created an algorithm that weighted years of experience as a negative factor in retention scores. My phone buzzed. Another email from the whistleblower, this time CCing what looked like every major tech journalist in Austin. Subject for immediate release. 48-hour notice before public disclosure of age discrimination at AVS. Colin went from pale to transparent. 48 hours. Standard practice, I said. Gives you time to settle before it goes public. Once TechCrunch gets this, once the EEOC opens an investigation, your valuation drops by half, and the Northbridge deal doesn't just die, it gets cremated and scattered at sea. What do you recommend? He directed the question at both of us. Desperation leaking through executive composure. Accept their terms, Elaine said immediately. All of them, tonight, before markets open tomorrow and someone does the math on your potential liability. And Brielle? Is already done. I pulled up my phone, showed them a LinkedIn notification. She updated her profile an hour ago. Seeking new opportunities in human capital optimization. She knows what's coming. Colin walked to his window overlooking Austin's glittering sprawl. 18 years building this company. Hundreds of millions in valuation. And it almost died because we tried to save $32 million by firing the people who understood it. $32 million in savings, I corrected. $91 million to me. $30 million in settlements. $50 million in reputation damage. $3 million in transition consulting. And immeasurable losses from the knowledge you tried to throw away. Plus legal fees, Elaine added helpfully. Colin turned back. Draft the reinstatement offers. All of them. Full back pay, restored benefits, written apologies. And Morgan. Yes? That knowledge preservation project. Expand it. I want every critical system, every vendor relationship, every piece of institutional memory documented and backed up. Whatever it costs. Smart choice. I stood to leave, paused at the door. Oh, and Colin. You might want to review your own communications about the optimization program. The whistleblower was very thorough, but they showed remarkable restraint in not including executive emails. So far. His face achieved a new shade of pale. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the price of institutional memory. You tried to buy efficiency by selling experience. Now you're learning that some debts compound at rates that would make loan sharks blush. I left him with Elaine, who was already drafting settlement agreements with the focused intensity of someone billing at $1,500 an hour. In the hallway, I met Kyle and Angela, who were leading a group of reinstated engineers in what they called the documentation revolution. How's it going? I asked. Dmitri from BOFA sent vodka. Kyle grinned. Said anyone who remembered Raskolnikov deserved proper Russian appreciation. Also, we've documented 17 critical processes that Tyler's team didn't even know existed. Including why the Tuesday cron job must never be touched, Angela added. Turns out, it's not just working around a vendor bug. It's also the trigger for a legacy billing system that processes $3 million in recurring revenue. What happens if it fails? We lose $3 million and get sued by 1,200 enterprise customers for breach of contract. I smiled. Document that in excruciating detail, with diagrams, and maybe a warning label. My phone chimed. A text from Damon. Heard Brielle's out. Heard you're in. Heard they're paying consulting rates to everyone who comes back. All true, interested. Already in the parking lot, with 12 other optimized engineers. We're calling ourselves the Expensive Expertise Collective. Catchy. We thought so. See you at the morning stand-up. The real one, not Tyler's motivation hour. I walked back through the building past the Innovation Hub, where stressed junior engineers tried to decode systems they'd dismissed as legacy cruft that morning. Past Brielle's dark office already being boxed up by security. Past the recycling bin, where my mug had started this avalanche. The building hummed with a different energy now. Not the frantic panic of systems failing, but the focused intensity of knowledge being preserved, documented, and properly valued. My phone showed one final notification. Wire confirmation from AVS, $50,000 for the 4-hour minimum that had saved their payment infrastructure. Below it, a text from the anonymous whistleblower. Thank you for showing them the cost. Some of us have been documenting these patterns for months, waiting for the right moment. Your $91 million lesson gave us the leverage we needed. I didn't respond. Whistleblowers work best in shadows, and this one had just saved 47 careers while ending one. Besides, I had documentation to write. 6 months to transfer 18 years of knowledge at $500,000 per month. Turned out, institutional memory had a price after all. And AVS was about to pay it in full. The load balancer certificates expired again at 11:43 p.m., exactly as I'd predicted in my handover documentation. The difference was, this time Kyle knew exactly what to do. He had the passwords, the vendor contacts, and most importantly, the understanding of why we'd built these particular failure modes into the system. I watched from my home office connected via the VPN I'd insisted remain active for my consulting period. The emergency response was almost beautiful in its efficiency. Engineers who'd been optimized and reinstated, moving with the precision of people who'd fought these fires before. Certificate rotation complete, Angela announced in the crisis channel. Jerome at CloudForge says to tell Morgan the Dostoevsky password was inspired. Payment gateway is green, Damon confirmed. All primary routes restored. Backup processors standing down. Batch settlement window opens in 3 hours 34 minutes, someone else added. Dimitri's expecting our call at 3:15. I smiled and closed my laptop. They didn't need me for this one. My phone rang. Colin, despite the late hour. We handled it, he said without preamble. The team handled the certificate expiration without calling you. I know, I was watching. That's the first time in 18 years I haven't gotten a 3 a.m. panic call during a certificate rotation. That's because for the first time in 18 years you have documentation that explains not just what to do, but why we do it. I pulled up the Knowledge Preservation Project dashboard. 417 critical processes documented so far. 83 vendor relationships properly transitioned. 22 tribal knowledge systems converted to sustainable practices. And it only cost us everything you tried to save plus interest. I let that sink in. But look at your metrics. System availability is up 3%. Mean time to resolution is down 40 minutes. Customer satisfaction scores are the highest in 2 years. Because we have experienced engineers who understand the systems. Because you're finally treating institutional knowledge as an asset instead of a liability. There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the muted sounds of a crisis being efficiently resolved. The board met tonight, Colin said finally. Emergency session. Brielle's termination was unanimous. They also approved something else. Oh. A new position. Chief Knowledge Officer. Someone to ensure we never again treat experience as expendable. Someone who understands that the difference between a company that survives and one that thrives is the wisdom to know what shouldn't be optimized away. Interesting. Who are you considering? I was hoping to discuss it with you. The board authorized a package that would make your $91 million look like a signing bonus. I laughed. Colin, I just took $91 million from you for being 1 minute late. Why would I come back? Because you spent 18 years building something worth protecting. Because walking away after 6 months of documentation doesn't preserve the culture that creates institutional knowledge in the first place. Because, he paused, choosing his words, because AVS needs someone who understands that efficiency without wisdom is just destruction at scale. And because I'm tired of learning expensive lessons. I'd rather pay for expertise up front than for disasters after the fact. I considered it. The money wasn't the point. I had more than I'd ever need. But the idea of institutionalizing the value of experience of building systems that preserve knowledge instead of discarding it. I'll think about it, I said. Ask me again after the 6-month transition. Fair enough. Oh, and Morgan. The whistleblower settled. All 47 reinstatements accepted. Full back pay, restored benefits, and a consent decree that puts our hiring and firing practices under independent review for the next 3 years. Good. What was the final number? $37 million in settlements, plus your 91, plus the 15 we lost during the outages, plus consulting fees. He laughed, but it was hollow. Brielle's optimization saved us negative $170 million. Plus the opportunity cost of nearly losing Northbridge. They're reconsidering, actually. Apparently, a company that spends $100 million to retain critical knowledge is more attractive than one that burns its foundation for quarterly savings. My laptop chimed. A message from the anonymous whistleblower. Justice served. Knowledge preserved. Thank you for lighting the fuse. I still didn't respond, but I smiled. Somewhere out there, a compliance analyst was sleeping better, knowing their colleagues would return. I should let you go, Colin said. The team's wrapping up the certificate issue. No overtime authorizations needed, they're all on consulting rates anyway. The Expensive Expertise Collective knows its worth. Expensive is right. Do you know what we're paying in consulting fees this month? About what you'd have lost in a single day of full system failure. Seems like a bargain. He sighed. Everything seems like a bargain compared to this morning. Morgan. Yes. That clause in your contract. The 12F acceleration trigger. When did you know you'd need it? I thought back to 2013, to a startup that promised to change the world to my younger self, who'd insisted on protection neither of us thought I'd use. I didn't know. I just knew that every system needs a failsafe, every critical component needs redundancy, and every irreplaceable person needs insurance against becoming replaceable. You were paranoid. I was an engineer. We build for failure modes, not success stories. After we hung up, I opened the umbrella folder one more time. Beside the original contract sat new documents: the consulting agreement, the Knowledge Preservation Project charter, the reinstatement letters for 47 engineers who'd nearly been optimized into oblivion. My phone buzzed with a final update from Kyle. All systems green. Batch processing scheduled. Dmitry sends his regards and says your Russian literature references have improved his night shifts. Same time next month. Not me, I typed back. You've got this. That's what documentation is for. Feels weird not needing you for a crisis. That's not weird, that's success. I closed the laptop and looked at my bank balance. $91 million plus consulting fees, all because someone thought they could optimize away 18 years of accumulated wisdom. They'd tried to dock my pay for being 1 minute late. Instead, they'd paid me to teach them why every minute of experience matters. The most expensive minute in AVS history had also been the most valuable. They just hadn't known it until the bill came due. The Austin skyline blazed with sunrise as I walked through AVS headquarters one last time. 6 months had passed since the $91 million minute. The building looked the same from outside, but everything within had transformed. The Innovation Hub was now the Knowledge Center, where senior engineers ran daily sessions explaining the why behind the what. The recycling bin that once held my mug now sported a bronze plaque in memory of optimization without wisdom. Died September 2024. Cost $170 million. Kyle intercepted me at the elevator, grinning. Final documentation review at 9. You coming? Wouldn't miss it. The boardroom at 9 sharp felt different from that morning 6 months ago. Colin sat relaxed, no longer checking his phone for disaster alerts. Verity actually smiled when discussing numbers. Even the board members on screen looked less like executioners and more like executives who'd learned an expensive lesson. The Knowledge Preservation Project final report. I began pulling up the presentation. 6 months, 547 critical processes documented, 112 vendor relationships properly transitioned, 47 engineers reinstated and retrained. Total cost $3 million in consulting fees. Total value, Sandra asked from the screen. Incalculable, but if you need numbers, 0 critical outages in the last quarter. Customer churn down 18%. Developer productivity up 35%. And the Northbridge acquisition is back on track. Because they trust us now, Colin added. A company that invests in preserving knowledge is one worth buying. I clicked to the final slide. Recommendations going forward. Maintain the Knowledge Center. Require documentation for all critical systems. Treat institutional memory as a corporate asset on par with intellectual property. And never ever optimize away experience in favor of expense. Approved, Harrison said quickly. All of it. We've learned that lesson.
Good. I closed the laptop. Then my work here is done. Colin stood. About that chief knowledge officer position.
Still no. I smiled to soften the rejection. I've spent 18 years building and 6 months teaching. Time for something new. What will you do? Consulting, probably. Helping other companies avoid your mistakes. I'm calling it institutional memory insurance. Catchy, right? Verity laughed, actually laughed. You'll make another fortune. Probably. Turns out there are a lot of companies about to learn why their weird old systems exist. We shook hands all around. As I reached the door, Tyler appeared, the same PM who'd tried to run infrastructure 6 months ago. He looked different, humbler, wiser. Ms. Tate, I wanted to apologize. I thought I understood systems because I could read dashboards. I didn't realize that knowing how something works isn't the same as knowing why it exists. That's the most intelligent thing I've heard you say. I shook his offered hand. Keep learning from the senior engineers. In 10 years, you might actually be dangerous. He beamed like I'd handed him a promotion. The elevator ride down felt like a victory lap in reverse. Each floor held memories: the payment gateway crisis on 27, the certificate rotation wars on 18, the great database migration of 2019 on 12. All documented now, all preserved for whoever came next. In the lobby, a new display caught my eye. The AVS Knowledge Hall of Fame, featuring photos of long-tenured engineers and their contributions. My picture sat in the center with a simple caption: Morgan Tate, 2006 to 2024, built systems that refuse to break. Below it in smaller text, saved AVS, with clause 12F, the most expensive minute in company history. Angela waited by the exit, leading a group of reinstated engineers. Heading out for the celebration lunch. The Expensive Expertise Collective lives on. With matching t-shirts now. Damon's design. Says I survived the optimization and all I got was market rate consulting fees. I laughed. Save me one, extra large, I earned it. Outside, the Texas sun hammered down on the parking lot where this had all started. My car sat in the same spot where I'd made the choice to arrive at 8:59 that fateful morning. My phone buzzed. A text from the anonymous whistleblower, their first direct contact. Thank you. My mom was one of the 47. She's back now teaching juniors why the Thursday deployment window exists. Your courage gave me courage. This time I responded, thank your mom. People like her are why companies survive their own stupidity. Will do. Good luck with whatever's next. I sat in my car engine running air conditioning, fighting the Austin heat. In my bank account sat $91 million, plus $3 million in consulting fees. In the building behind me, systems hummed along, tended by people who understood them. In boardrooms across the city, executives would think twice before optimizing away expertise. All because HR tried to dock my pay at 8:59. By 9:02, I'd changed the game forever. I pulled out of the parking lot for the last time, past the building where I'd spent 18 years, past the careers I'd saved, past the expensive lesson I'd taught. 8:59, they'd stolen a minute of my pay. 9:02, I'd taken back everything and sent them the bill for their short-sightedness. Some called it revenge. I called it the market price for institutional memory. Either way, the check had cleared. And that's the end of my story. Thank you so much for listening to this tale of corporate chess and calculated revenge. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening to this story? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and what you thought about Morgan's $91 million minute. Did you think the revenge was justified? What would you have done in her position? If you enjoyed this story of institutional knowledge triumphing over optimization obsession, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more tales of workplace justice. And if you really want to help this story reach more listeners who might be facing their own corporate optimization nightmares, please hit the hype button. It helps push this content to people who need to hear that experience has value and wisdom has a price. Until next time, remember, every weird system exists for a reason, and every minute of experience matters.